So T1 started out their 2025 today against D Plus Kia. So I'm going to check out all three of the drafts from their best of three this morning and see what they're up to. So D Plus first pick Nidalee on blue side. This is atrocious, absolutely terrible. Even though a lot of teams like to build comps around it, the fact of the matter is it's just a useless champion. Champion doesn't offer anything. In the early game, she can have some effective ganks if you draft some setup for her, like Pantheon or Nectin or something like that. Otherwise, she's just basically going to power farm. Maybe she can get some invades off and annoy the enemy jungler. Um, but her early game pressure is not what it used to be. In addition, she just doesn't offer anything in team fights, mostly just missed spears and a couple heals. So this champion is just really, really bad, and I don't like that whatsoever. T1's first rotate is really solid. Ashe and Zyra is really, really good. Ashe is probably the strongest AD in the game right now with the recent buffs that came in on the first patch of the new season. And Zyra is also really good. Even though most teams don't player support these days, she's a jungle support flex. She's still really strong in the jungle. She actually never became weak in the jungle. I'm not entirely sure why she fell off, but she's an extremely fast farmer, faster than Nidalee actually. And she's obviously just going to outscale and outvalue Nidalee in team fights, so I really like that as a jungle pick as well. And then D plus, go ahead and 2-3 Ezreal Leona. This is a pretty standard lane combo, even though I'm not sure it's the best one. But these are both pretty high priority champions. Ezreal's a top 3, top 4 AD in the game currently, and can also match Ashe's range without too much issue, so he's not going to have too much trouble in the lane phase. And Leona as well is just a pretty strong support right now. Out of the tank engaged supports, she is definitely the strongest one in my opinion, so I don't really have a huge problem with that. The only thing here is that D plus is kind of random theme here. They have a bit of a poke comp with Nidalee Ezreal, so maybe they're going to go with something like a Jason and a tank top and kind of rely on that. But then on T1 side, you can easily just go something like Soraka and just out sustain the poke very, very easily. Or you can just go dive and absolutely just destroy the poke and not even let them get any poke off at the objective. And then T1 close first phase with Yone. This is interesting. I would have just matched support here. There's no real reason to blind pick mid lane. You're going to be blind picking after ban phase anyways on B4, so maybe that's why they did it. They just didn't want more mid laners to be banned out. But this also lets D plus ban out really good supports that pair with Ashe, like the Braum. So this was an interesting decision by T1. I would have just matched support personally. But anyways, Yone is still a strong champion, still scales incredibly well, and T1's building just a basic hyper-scaling teamfight comp that I think should work out pretty well for him. So T1 going R4 Rel, this is pretty standard support pick these days and offers just a lot of utility, a lot of engage for team fights. Again, going along with their theme of just basic front-to-back team fighting with kind of a lot of AoE spells with the Zyra, the Yone, the Rel. Pretty standard there. Even though I'm not a huge fan of it, especially into super long range like the Nidalee, the Ezreal, the Jace, a lot of poke, it's not super guaranteed that the Rel's going to get a lot of value. D plus close out with Mbessa and Jace, so like I said, the Jace is coming in. They're going full poke comp here, so I would have just gone Soraka if I were T1 to out-sustain the poke, but Mbessa, I'm really glad we're getting a pick here. Still a really strong champion, even in the new season. I think I hope she gets to see some pro play this year because she's really cool, really fun to watch. Really interesting comp from D plus here. I haven't seen a poke comp like this in a long time. And T1 close out on R5 with the Gragas into the Jace. Don't love the matchup. He's never going to get moved by the Jace really, or the Mbessa rather. It's just kind of interesting. The two counters I know to Mbessa are Poppy and Maokai. I'm not entirely sure why we're picking Gragas, especially when we already have AP in the jungle. So not a great draft from T1. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I would have just gone some type of sustain, like Soraka in the support role to out-sustain the poke, meaning that none of the poke damage is actually going to stick, and then you can fight from there. If you have a tank engaged top lane like Malphite or Ornn, I feel like really would have been high value this game. Let's go and jump into game 2. So here we are in game 2, and T1 have first picked K'Sante on blue side. This is really, really sus, especially since you didn't ban any of the counters to K'Sante, meaning that D plus get to immediately open with Rumble Wukong, which is a winning top lane for them, an outscaling top lane for them, and a really strong jungle pick in the current meta. I do think Wukong is pretty good if you're going to pick dive, but then again, there are a lot of anti-dive champions in the game, especially in the support role with Renata that you see on that second rotate from T1. Varus Renata is not only a very strong lane combo, but Varus also has very long range for an ADC. If you go on hit or poke, it doesn't really matter. And Renata's really, really good into hard dive, which Wukong basically has to do. You can see D plus kind of pivoting away from that. Instead of picking something like an Ahri to pair with the Wukong, they go Corki instead. which is probably going into the bot lane nonetheless. But even still, you'll probably see DK continue to pivot away from dive and short range into more long range, like they did last game, because Renata into dive is extremely good. Through the first phase, I like DK's draft better. I think they scale better. They have better lane matchup in the top lane. And, Corki is just super turbo broken right now. Varus is also top tier ADC. If he goes on hit, I hate lethality Varus currently, but Corki is just super good. Wukong is also super good, and with Poppy ban, Wukong doesn't really have any bad matchups in the jungle 1v1. So DK R4 Rakan, I kind of like this. I think it's pretty good. Even though it's not paired with Xayah, it's not the most high value Rakan ever. You can see that both Renata and Varus are pretty immobile, and it's pretty likely that T1's going to pick an immobile mage in the mid lane because they need AP damage in there as the Victor. So Rakan plus Wukong is going to have a lot of value this game, even though I said they'll pivot away from the dive. Yes, it's into Renata, but the fact of the matter is that Victor and Varus are going to have a really hard time surviving all the ult layering that's going to come out of DK here with Rakan, Wukong, and then Rumble ult on top. The immobility of T1 is really going to come back to bite them. So I really like the dive aspects that DK has, but they're not fully committing to the dive where Renata is going to get a whole lot of value. And then they go Xin into Wukong. Yes, you're going to be winning the early 1v1, but early 1v1s in jungle don't really happen and don't really matter in terms of the individual matchup. And Xin also really only does super well with an enchanter. So the fact is that he's going to be diving in pretty much alone, and he's going to have a lot of trouble surviving, I think, especially with the Xerath pick. I love this Xerath pick. It beats the Victor, outranges the Victor in lane, and it does really well here because T1 doesn't have consistent dive to be able to get on top of him. So Victor plus or Xerath rather plus Corki is going to have a really easy time playing this game because T1 doesn't really have a way to get on top of the backline easily, whereas Wukong plus Rakan plus the ult layering from Rumble is going to be a really good backline threat for D+. So I definitely like this draft better for DK as well in game 2. And now here we are in Game 3, the final game of the series. It's kind of ironic how every time I say a team has a better draft, they end up losing. Maybe I'm just running my mouth and I'm absolutely stupid and I'm just wasting my time here. But anyways, here we are in Game 3. D+ first pick Vi. I think Vi, similar to Wukong, is just a really strong AD bruiser right now. Even though none of these AD bruiser fighters scale particularly well, except for Viego, they don't scale bad either. So Vi's a completely fine pick. Even though she's really easily counterable by champions like Morgana and Kindred, no one's actually going to pick those counters, so Vi's probably going to end up being perfectly fine. T1 first rotate Poppy and Azir. We can infer that this Poppy's going jungle because it doesn't win the early 1v1 because of the ground mechanic on the dash. But again, jungle's not really about early 1v1 in competitive because that doesn't end up happening a whole lot. So we'll see what kind of combos they can build with Poppy down the draft. Obviously, the Poppy Azir combo has potential, but into Ahri, I can see it having some trouble there. And speaking of Ahri, Ahri Vi combo is very strong. If they actually use it, there's a ton of times in competitive I've seen teams just not use the combo. Ahri presses, or Vi presses R, Ahri ults in, free charm land, and it's pretty much just a free kill. But the amount of times I've not seen pro teams take advantage of this is pretty astounding, so we'll see if they can actually do that there. And then they go ahead and pick Jinx along with the Ahri. This is pretty interesting, especially since you've already seen Azir and Poppy picked. I do like the range and I do like the scaling, but the immobility of Jinx is something that it's cause for concern for me, right? Even if she brings Ghost, which she probably won't, I don't know if her reset is going to be enough to escape the Poppy plus Azir, especially if Azir's going in for a combo here. So I think that a more mobile option could have been better, or a longer range option like a Caitlyn maybe could have worked better here, but Jinx is completely fine. She's still a very strong champion, so if she can stay safe, she's going to have a lot of value here. And then T1 close first phase with Jax. This is just super random. I don't understand why teams are doing this. They should have just matched AD pick here. There's absolutely no reason not to. Now they're going to be put really far down into the AD pool. Yes, they can just go something. Varus is still open, Ezreal's still open, so maybe not so much, but I just don't like the idea of blind picking top lane so early when you have R5 counterpick available to you. So essentially they've blind picked both solo lanes for no reason and gotten poor matchups in both solo lanes for literally no reason. They go ahead and it looks like it's going to be Jhin on R4 here. This isn't very good because you have no mobility and you don't outrange or outscale the Jinx. I would have just picked something like Cog Lulu here, or Morgana Caitlyn you could have done as well. Caitlyn's banned. I apologize for that, but I think that Jin's not really a great pick here. You could have gone Ezreal too. You just need some sort of survivability into the dive threat of Vi, plus Ari, plus a Jinx ult on top of that. So I don't really love the Jhin. But D plus go ahead and close out here with Sion and Braum. This is really, really good. I really like this. Sion is going to have a pretty much free lane into Jax to just sit and farm and scale. Even though he's going to fall a little bit behind in CS, Jax is never going to be able to kill him, so I really like the Sion for frontline this game, especially with a Jhin. Jhin sucks at killing tanks, so Sion's really good. And Braum as well is just an absolutely super broken champion. I don't know why more teams don't pick this guy, but he's just really, really good. His passive, his shield, his ult, everything is really, really good about Braum. Pairs pretty well with the Jinx in lane, although that bot lane's probably not going to be seeing too much 2v2 action. But overall, I definitely like D plus Kia's draft a lot better. It's much more well-rounded. You have a great 2v2 mid jungle. You outscale. You have better range. You have better frontline. They're just a much more well-rounded, easy to execute comp, especially with the Bard coming on R5 for T1. It just seems really random to me. This comp doesn't really know what it wants to do, even though they scale okay. With Azir plus Jax and Jhin is okay. I just think that their champs are just kind of random. They don't really have any synergies or common goals inside of the game. So I think D plus is going to have a much easier time playing out this game than T1 is. So overall, some interesting drafts from T1. I'm not going to run my mouth and say that they're trash or they're going to lose or anything, but they did end up losing today, and I would like to think that the drafts had something to do with that. But again, it's the first game of the season, so we got a long way to go. I bet T1 will somehow find a way to turn around and end up winning something this year. Thanks for watching. See you next time.